welcome to the Wild Courage podcast. Today, I guess it's going to be my turn to be in the hot seat. We've been doing this podcast for about a year, have about 16 episodes out, and everyone keeps bringing to my attention that I should probably do it because I keep dropping hints in my story, so it's probably time that I do it. And I want to introduce you guys to a very close friend of mine named Josh Stenson, who is going to be the guy that gets the challenge of doing my interview. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
Thanks for having me. It is time.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's, I guess part of the reason why I haven't done it is because I never wanted this to be about me, this podcast. But again, everyone that I've had on are people that I know and been my mentors in one capacity or have these cool, gnarly redemption stories. And I guess I do relate to part of their story in some way. And so, yeah, I've been getting a lot of heat for not doing it. So today's the day.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I know probably a decent amount of your story, right? That you shared over the years. And I think we've known each other for, what, six-ish years now?
Yeah. Josh lives like a mile down the street from me, and we have this core group of friends. We all live on Sales Yard Road because the livestock sale barn is on our street, so it's called Sales Yard Road. And we refer to ourselves as the Sales Yarders. But our families kind of do everything together. We camp together and do life together, and our kids, we never know whose kids are at whose houses, eating whose food. Like, we just really do life together. And so it was actually my wife's idea, like, you should have Josh sit down and do this with you. So again, thanks for tackling this.
No, I'm honored, and it's a privilege. And like I said, I think a decent amount of your story, but there's still so much that I'm sure I don't know, and we'll uncover today. And I feel like your story could easily be a movie. You know, it has a little bit of everything. It has the party days, the trauma, the rock bottom, the redemption story, which I've had that's when we met each other. That's when I've known you as the redemption part. But it literally has a little bit of everything. So I'm excited for you to take us on this journey today.
Yeah, well, let's do it.
Awesome. And I think starting kind of going back to the beginning, right? Your parents got divorced at an early age, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think I was like in kindergarten.
Okay.
And so some of my earliest memories aren't super great. Kind of like,
sure.
You know, you tend to remember the things that stick out. But as we get older, we learn that a lot of it is from trauma or not the great things. And I know there were great things when I was little, when my mom and dad were married. But, you know, as far back as my memory goes, it's like I can remember some good things, but a lot early on was some of it, like the fighting and this and that. And then I just remember one day, not super clearly, but it was like my dad trying to explain to me that him and I were moving to Montana. And my mom and my little sister Amy, who's like 4 years younger than me, so she was real little, she wouldn't remember any of that, but we're moving away. And I just remember being super confused, like, well, why are mom and sister moving that way and we're moving to Montana?
Yeah, how did that happen? How did it go from we're getting divorced to you and your sister splitting up and going different ways?
I've learned later in life that there were some ultimatums made by my dad to my mom of why that happened, because it's not normal, right? Usually the mom gets the kids. And my dad kind of fought for me, and so it just ended up that way. And I know that as my mom and I have been on this redemptive healing journey, that was a very hard thing for her to deal with, and something that she's deeply regretted of not, you know, of letting me go with my dad. Not that she really had a choice, I guess. And things were back different in the early 70s, you know? Like, it's not like it is today, is like with going to court and custody battles and this and that. I think it was just kind of, they agreed that this is how it was going to be. And was very painful for my dad. My memories of us moving to Montana were also not great.
Okay.
Just remember my dad like trying himself to sleep at night. I could hear him in the room and like just like wanting to make him feel better, you know. And then he had a job like logging, and I would walk to school. It was like a mile maybe, and then I'd come home, and he wouldn't be home till 6, 7 o'clock at night. So from 3 o'clock to 6 or 7, I was by myself. Like, which is crazy
Yeah.
to think of,
Yeah.
like, your 5 or 6 year old. It's just a different time, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it didn't probably hurt him for that to be the case, but he was going through so much of on his own. I don't really know where he was at when he was like thinking about that.
So how did you? I've kind of wondered this. How did you interpret, like as a child, right? Like it's hard enough that your parents are getting divorced. You're trying to figure out why they're not together anymore, and now you're away from your mom, your sister. Like, do you remember thinking like that through, or trying to rationalize it? Was it just you kind of went into survival mode and here's life now and this is what it looks like?
Yeah, I don't think you have that capacity to like wonder or think like logically, rationalize what's happening. It's like this is life. And I just remember being sad, like missing my mom, my little sister a lot. And then we weren't up there too long, and my dad got remarried.
Okay.
And to a lovely woman who I'm friends with to this day. So that was cool how we reconnected. But she was great. I don't think they were married, but a month or two.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden we were moving back to my hometown in Idaho without any explanation.
Yeah. So she wasn't in your life very long.
No, and it's weird. Like I remember my dad telling me that like I'm allergic to cats, and like she had cats, and we moved into her house, and she wasn't willing to get rid of her cats.
Okay.
And I've since talked to her about it. She's like, Jeremy, I didn't even have cats. So I don't think my dad on purpose was like making it my fault, but subconsciously I'm like unpacked just a few years ago, like, oh, that's a kind of a lot to put on a kid. Like, you're the reason why this marriage didn't work, right?
Oh, for sure. Did you see your mom and sister when you were in Montana at all?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I remember my sister coming up with my grandparents, like for their wedding and stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe in the summer for a minute, but it wasn't until I was later that I remembered like the transaction of the drop off and swap.
Yeah.
Which I've had to get some healing in, how painful that was. Like I would literally get like sick like a week before I was going to go see my mom because I knew I was going to miss my dad. And then I wouldn't enjoy my time there with my mom for 3 or 4 days until I was kind of over being sad about leaving my dad, and then vice versa. A week before I'd go home, I just would get these really bad like stomach aches. Like it physically would show up, like, and then just screaming and crying 2 hours before and after the drop off. It didn't matter which parent. It was just like torture. A couple of years ago, I had a dream. There's an old truck stop that's been abandoned in at the halfway point between Boise and American Falls. This is where I grew up, and my mom lived in Boise. That the drop off would happen, and I had a dream that I was in this wrecking ball, and I was like destroying this truck stop that represented this painful, drop off spot between my mom and my dad. So that's kind of like childhood up to like, 3rd, 4th grade was just kind of that. Spend the summers with my mom for a month, and then some holidays here and there, and my sister would swap, so we'd get to spend a little bit of time.
So you guys weren't together very often.
No. We'd get when I'd go see my mom for a month, I guess we'd be together, and then she'd get to spend a month with us in the summers like that. We didn't grow up together.
It sounds brutal from a standpoint that, like you said, you're with your mom, but you're not with your dad, vice versa. It's like it's a no-win situation, right? I mean, no matter who you're with, you're missing the other one. You're trying to figure out why we're not together. Like as a child, I can imagine that's pretty tough.
Yeah, and it being extremely painful for them too. Like I know for my dad and my mom, you know, remarried at that point, and it, you don't know the ramifications of it till it really shows up later in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all these things I'm learning now about abandonment and
Sure.
feeling neglect. Like I just remember, like in Montana, I teach myself how to play baseball by throwing the ball up on the rough and it'd roll off and I'd catch it. You know, just being a lonely little kid, which shapes us to today. Like I really don't care to be alone, as you know.
Yeah. Well, and even when you were with your dad, he wasn't around a decent amount, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, he was, and I have so much grace for both my parents. And it's like, talking to my mom, she had me when she was like just barely 18. So I happened when she was 17, right?
Yeah.
And then making these life-altering decisions at 22. Like, who knows what the hell they're doing at 22 years old, right? Like, there's no way that I could be making these types of decisions because they're not equipped to.
Right.
So I just have a ton of grace for, you know, my parents, but also recognizing I've learned in this journey of like, we protect our parents a lot.
Right, yeah.
Right, and recognizing like, oh, they didn't show up for me here.
Mm-hmm.
I have grace for them, but this is kind of the way I am, is because they weren't there for this or that, and like just being okay with it and being like, no, I still love them, and they're human, and they made some big mistakes.
Right, yeah. And I've had the opportunity to get to know your mom a little bit. I mean, she's awesome. Everybody loves her.
Yeah, she
has more energy than anybody I know.
Yeah, and her and I have had a beautiful redemptive journey and story of me reconciling like a lot of the pain in my past, and where we're at today is amazing.
Right. I wish I would have gotten to meet your dad. You know, everybody I've talked to speaks extremely highly of him. Sounds like you carry a lot of stuff that he instilled in you, and just, you know, you guys, it sounds like you have a lot of his traits and attributes, and you both are very gregarious and make a lot of friends, and that's what I picture when I hear people talk about your dad, as a guy that everybody loved.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think of it very often, but the other day I was driving home from doing a podcast in Wyoming, and I was like, I am my father's son.
Yeah.
Like, I hear myself sometimes, I'm like, that's not my dad, but it's that, you know?
Yeah.
And he unfortunately passed away 5 years ago, out of the blue. But yeah, I've had to go on a healing journey with him being gone.
Right.
It's been harder, so that's why I always encourage people, like, have those hard talks with your parents while you still can, so that they can get healing and redemption. Because what I found with my mom is she had so much guilt and shame that from, you know, how things shook out when I was little, that I really couldn't forgive her for until I told her my whole story. And then once I did, it like set us both free.
Yeah.
It was super hard to do that, but it's been harder to do with my dad because it's a one-way thing, and you can get healing from a parent that's gone, in this journey, but it's a lot easier to do it when you can sit down and have a conversation with them.
Right. So let's tap into that a little bit, because you've helped me a lot and encouraged me. I've had the opportunity to recently hear my dad's story. Right. I sat down with him and he shared his story, his bullet points, and it was fantastic. I mean, we're both crying. I'm able to connect some dots, and just the compassion that I was able to have through hearing his story, it was just a fantastic experience, and I'm so thankful for us being able to sit down and do that. My question is, what encouragement can you impart to maybe some guys, some gals that don't have that opportunity, like you said that you didn't really have with your father? What's that journey been like?
Well, it is one of compassion, because I encourage anybody that's struggling with someone, and it's hard to do, ask them their story. And with our parents, especially our parents' generation, was such a under the rug swept generation.
Yeah.
Right, because they were raised by parents of the Great Depression. What in the hell are you going to bitch and moan about if you've been through the Great Depression,
so
right?
sure.
So you raise your kids in a way of, you don't complain about stuff, you don't talk about stuff, especially feelings, like that we're in like new territory.
Yeah.
Talking about these things, right? So to go back and have that conversation with your dad and ask them their story, and like everything makes more sense, and you have so much more capacity for compassion for them. And that's why when I'm helping dudes or whatever, like, what was your grandparents like?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, it's like, oh, my dad had it way worse than I did. And
Yeah.
it's like, as you can see through generational lines, like, we're getting better. Like, our parents had it way
Yeah,
worse
for
than
sure.
we did, right? And so through that kind of compassion and understanding of like, man, they've been through a lot. And just like with my mom, like getting to the point, like she made some hard decisions at a very, very young age that she regretted. Who doesn't, right? We're all human and make. So just going back into my dad's life and looking at what he'd been through and the decisions he made that he wasn't proud of, but we got to live with those decisions, right? But just kind of having compassion for him, and when I'd get frustrated that he did things the way that he did, and he's gone, I can't talk to him about it, but I can go back into his story and look at his life and find compassion for him, which provides healing for me, you know?
So how did you uncover his story, I guess? Is it stuff that you've heard over the years? Is it anything that you had to, like, dive into? Like, how did you...
I put myself in his shoes.
Okay.
As a single dad, with him trying to
Yeah.
go through the heartache of his life, not throwing any shame on my mom, but he was heartbroken when my mom left him. So trying to mitigate and manage your own brokenness and raise a 5 or 6 year old boy, doing the best that you can, and having a job, like, that's a lot on your plate. And my dad was young, right? So if I put myself at what he was going up against when I was his age,
that's good.
dude, he did great. I couldn't have done it. I probably would have, if I would have had a child at his age in those circumstances, he fought for me.
Yeah.
I would have said, you know what, you're better off with your mom. I got to go figure this out. My heart's broke. She was in a better place. I'm not saying she wasn't hurt over the divorce, but it was her choice. She left him.
Yeah.
It would have made sense, right? But he did. He fought for me.
Yeah, that's good.
So he made some mistakes along the way, but I can always go back to, what's the story? No, he fought for me.
And that's where the compassion comes in, right?
Yeah. He chose me. He chose, even though he knew it would be harder for him to raise a boy and have a full-time job, he did it.
Yeah. That's good. That's real good, Terry. Now, part of what's been confusing for me and just knowing you over these last 6 years is, you know, I feel like we travel to different places, we go camping, and it's like everywhere we go, oh yeah, I used to live there, or I knew this person here, and you know, we go out to Montana and it's like, oh, I lived there for a little while, and then we're going to Wyoming for a camping trip, and along the way we're stopping in places we're like, oh, that's where I went to high school, and it's super confusing to me because I feel like you've lived everywhere. And so what was after Montana? You moved again, so you came to Idaho, right?
Yeah, we moved back to my hometown.
Okay.
And it was a soft landing spot. Dad divorced again, grandma and grandpa there, and I think he needed some time to figure some stuff out at this point. So I started spending a lot of time with my grandma and grandpa.
Okay.
In my American Falls, and my mom's mom and dad also lived in American Falls. So I had some places to be, like he was trying to figure it out. Again, I don't remember exactly where we even lived. I think we lived with grandma and grandpa for a while. And then he actually, not too long after we moved back, married a girl he went to high school with.
Okay.
They were married for a few years.
How long was he single for?
Never very long.
Okay.
I don't know the time frames. Like, it's a little blurry to me. Especially when you're little, everything's bigger and happens faster or slower, right?
Yeah.
So that's when my life really started changing, is when he married stepmom number 2, we'll call her.
Okay.
So mom number 3, stepmom number 2.
And you were how old?
I want to say I was in like 5th grade.
Okay.
Something like that. Maybe younger, maybe 4th grade. I really don't remember. she had a son and daughter who were younger than me.
Okay.
Like one the son of the year, daughter a couple of years, or my sister's age. And dad bought a place outside of town, and that's when my life really started to change, not for the greatest. There was a lot of manipulation and a lot of things that I've had to work through later in my life happened in this 10-year time period when they were married. But we were there for a year or two, and then my dad took a job in California in the Bay Area managing a ranch,
Okay.
a cattle ranch outside of Oakland, actually. So we moved again.
You and the stepmom and the kids. Yep. Okay.
Not my sister, but yeah, the new family. We moved there. We were there for I went to school for a year and a half there, and then Dad came home. I think I was home for Christmas visiting my mom, and he picked me up with all of our stuff, and like we're moving to Oregon. So like I didn't even say goodbye to my friends. I had stuff in my locker. Like, you know, you're getting the age of junior high where your friendships are like starting to develop, and that was hard for me.
So Oregon was with new stepmom number 2. Okay.
Yep. So we moved to Oregon. She had started to become manipulative, looking back at it now. And it was starting, the older I got, the more it turned physical.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know why. I didn't get along great with her kids, I guess. She would say stuff to me like, I'd be like, I'm gonna tell my dad that you scratched me, or, you know, whatever, beat me, like, we're like past the line of spanking.
So she was physically abusive.
Yeah.
Okay.
She would say things to me like, if you tell your dad and we get a divorce, it'll be your fault, like it was the other 2 times. Like that kind of stuff that was like, oh, I've already seen my dad go through all this pain of these other marriages, and so I just felt trapped. I felt trapped in this, like nobody had my back, right? Like I couldn't say, Dad, you don't know what she's doing to me, right?
Well, that seed was planted with the cat thing too, right? Like, as a kid, that's already in the back of your mind, and she's adding on.
She confirmed it. You're exactly right. Which again, at the time I didn't know any of this. This is all stuff that has been a revelation to me in the last 10 years, 5 years. So I kind of just towed the line and felt trapped and alone. And she was just constantly manipulative like that. Again, we were in Oregon I went to school for like a year and a half. Halfway through 8th grade, my dad ran the meeting. And my dad was gone all the time. Like when you work on these big ranches, like you work 6.5 days a week. We'd always go to church. I grew up in church, always went to church on Wednesday night, Sunday, and Sunday night, right? The denomination I grew up in, that you went to church 3 times a week. So he had Sundays off most of the time. So, but other than that, like I was with this woman all the time. And yeah, halfway through 8th grade, comes home. It's like, we're moving back home to American Falls. And I'm like, I have friends, I'm on the basketball team. This was like the most painful move for me, because I loved living in Paisley, Oregon, this little tiny town. I had my friend groups, and again, I was on the basketball team.
You were pretty involved in sports, right? Like, was that kind of an escape for you at the time a little bit?
Looking back now, like, yeah, that's why it drove me to, like, anything I could do to not be at home with her.
Right.
Like, if I could go in the cowboy world, like, I grew up wanting to be a cowboy. I had horses. My first horse I got for, like, my 4th birthday. All I ever wanted to do is a cowboy. Like, I never watched Star Wars to this day because it wasn't about cowboys. Like, I never got into anything in my life that wasn't cowboys until sports came along. And on the weekends, I would get to go with my dad often, and as with all these big cowboy crews, right? And then trot out, and that was like what I lived for.
Yeah.
I remember being so sad on those Saturdays that I couldn't. They were going to do something that I couldn't go with them. knowing that I'd be stuck with her all day on Saturday
Right.
and not to go be with these cowboys and trot out with my dad, go make these big circles and do what I love to do. I just remember like that feeling of like him saying, "No, I can't take you tomorrow," of devastation of knowing what it was going to cost me on the other end of it.
Because you couldn't go anywhere. There was no escape.
I just felt
Yeah.
trapped, man. Like looking back now and that whole decade of living with her, feeling trapped. But again, we moved a year and a half, and I'm like, that one sucked. That one was hard to transition back. Now, I went to like second and third grade at home. So fast forward to eighth grade, I remember a bunch of these kids.
Okay.
But basketball season's already started. Dad, I mean, I was devastated, right? Because you're right. It was an outlet for me to be out of the house, trying to find my identity away from the home life situation, right? That they had what they called the fifth quarter. So the coach let me be on the fifth quarter team. So after the game was over, all the parents left, and like the guys at the end of the bench got to play in the quarter.
Yeah.
Because these guys were way better than me, and the team was already established. So that was hard to transition back. But looking back now, like moving so much, I had to get good at making friends, right? Which has served me well to today, I guess.
Right. Okay. So you come back, it's eighth grade, and then did you stay there for high school? Where was high school?
I got to go to, so up until eighth grade, I never went to the same school for 2 years in a row.
That's crazy.
Until high school. So halfway of eighth grade, and then I did get to graduate and go to all 4 years of high school, which I'm really grateful for.
Okay.
Because that's a pretty formative time in your life of establishing who you are and your identity, right? And high school was, getting my driver's license was one of the single most important days of my life.
So that was freedom,
I
right?
represented freedom.
Yeah.
I bought a car with money that I worked for when I was 13. And Dad and Uncle Ralph got it going. So when I got my license at 14 back then in Idaho, like you didn't have to drive with anybody. Like
So young. Yeah.
You just couldn't drive. You weren't supposed to drive at night until you were 16, right? Yeah, I look at now like kids when 14 should not be driving.
What car did you get? What was
I
your
got
car?
a 1968 Dodge Power Wagon, short bed 4-wheel drive, which is rare. I've never seen another one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was canary yellow, and I waxed that thing 15 times. It didn't run yet, my dad got it going, and but that represented freedom, man. And then sports, really starts. You got freshman basketball, you got JV football, and that was, and the great thing about like basketball is when you're a freshman, you don't practice till 7:30 at night because the varsity girls, varsity boys, JV gets to practice in front of you, which meant I could stay in town because we lived out my dad had a ranch that we were fixing up, and I could stay in town and I'd hang out at grandma's or hang out with friends. So during sports, I'd leave in the morning and I didn't have to be home ever.
So that worked out well for you.
Yeah, because the manipulation got worse. I was pretty popular in high school. Had girlfriends all the time, had a car, played sports, was getting better at sports, and
you made it off the fifth quarter team?
Yeah, you had to try out for freshman basketball. I made the team, and then between my freshman and sophomore year, I grew a bunch.
Okay, yeah.
And that helped. And I went to basketball camps. Like I worked hard at it. But again, it was more about this escape of, and an outlet, of trying to figure out who I was and needed to be. But yeah, it was my refuge, man. I got to not be at home. The abuse started changing to more manipulation.
So what was the manipulation like when you were older? Like was it still the physical stuff, or was it what she would say?
Some, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. She'd get a hold of me. But things like, I lived downstairs in an unfinished basement in this old house we lived in, like concrete walls. My dad framed it up a corner of it next to the hopper where we had coal. Like I would shovel coal into the hopper for heat, and I would walk upstairs. It'd be so cold down there because they pumped all the heat upstairs, right? And I didn't have any. I had to plug in milk cow's heater down there.
Yeah.
But I'd go upstairs and she would like make them hot cereal, bacon, eggs for breakfast, and I'd be walking upstairs. She'd be carrying me into their rooms, and she'd look at me and be like, "If you want anything to eat, you know where the cold cereal is." So just that kind of, manipulation. My friends or my girlfriend would call me, and I'd hear the phone from downstairs. I'd run upstairs, and right when I'd be getting there, she'd be on the phone and looking at me and being like, "He's not here right now, and he can't talk on the phone." Like,
Wow.
you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so it was constant torment, which is why, again, the sports and really was an
Right.
outlet escape for me. And again, that have my driver's license and my own transportation was like, I was never home, and I had a job.
Okay. So when you were talking about the basement, is this the snake situation?
Yeah.
Like what? Like
So would have bull snakes.
we both don't like snakes.
Yeah.
So when you told me this, I like.
So there's this. Imagine this basement, and there's a room that they dump the coal outside.
Yeah.
Then you have to shovel, or they had a hopper that filled this room full of coal. And you would shovel, you'd open the door, and you'd take this coal and shovel it into a hopper that went into the furnace into a auger, right? And that's how we heated the house. Well, there was cracks in this foundation, and I mean, there was mice everywhere. I had mouse traps everywhere in my room. But one year, a bull snake got in there and had,
Gosh.
I don't know how many babies or how many of them they had. But I would get up in the morning, and there'd be baby snakes like coiled up in my shoes, in my closet. Everywhere I could think of, there would be snakes, and I've always been afraid of snakes.
Yeah.
That house, man,
Brutal.
living down there, in
Yeah.
cold concrete.
I can't imagine that. Yeah, you and I both don't do snakes. That's brutal. So the high school, you have your car, you're doing sports. When I hear kind of like you talk about those teenage years, which kind of transition into like the 20s and whatnot, I think of like party days. I think of, you surfing the front hood of your car down Main Street, your mullet's blowing in the wind, like you got your Def Leppard shirt with no sleeves, like that's what I picture. Like, is that?
That's very accurate. Other than growing up in the religious house I grew up in, you technically could listen to Def Leppard, but
Right. Okay.
I did. I just didn't have the T-shirt. Yeah, so my sophomore year, I got a Trans Am T-top. I am I'm that guy, right?
Yeah.
Way, way cooler than I really was in my own head. Like, jock, had my parking spot, like, at the high school. And if anybody parked in it, one of my buddies with the truck would hook onto if underclassmen or somebody parked in my spot, or any of our spots, we'd, like, drag their cars out in the middle of the parking lot, right? Like,
That's hilarious.
I mean, like, jock, every stereotypical 1990s movie you've ever seen, I was that guy. I mean,
Yeah.
Always had a girlfriend and the Trans Am with the T-tops, and we cruised. That was all we did. Worked at the grocery store with all my buddies. Like, I was the cliche. The mullet,
Funny. Yeah.
all of it.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing now, but yeah, I was that guy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
And growing up the way I did, like, I never really even had a beer till like my junior, senior summer, and I was so scared. I had a hard like curfew,
Mhm.
I kind of towed the line. I was afraid of the party thing because beer equaled hell, pretty much.
So you didn't really drink in high school then?
I did a little bit,
Okay.
more my senior year. I dabbled more, but it wasn't like what it turned into be for sure. I was really scared.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I didn't realize that because we'll kind of transition into where that went. But I didn't drink a lot in high school either. There's alcoholism on both sides of my family, and my parents, from a religious standpoint, I saw my dad drink a beer maybe twice growing up. Like, it just wasn't what you do, right?
Yeah, I was never around it.
Yeah.
Never.
But then, right, so coming from that to then, for me, it was now I'm 21, I can drink and it's okay. So that's kind of what started my road down that path. So for you, though, high school, not really drinking much, you just said senior year, like, where did it go from there?
Well, when I graduated from high school, I was like, now I'm gonna do sports is over.
Right.
I did so poorly in school that I barely graduated. I would always cheat my way through school to have a 2.0 and be eligible for sport, but that was it. Like I never really had like a 2.2 even. Like it was like, what do I got to do to stay eligible? And then usually a girlfriend or somebody would. I mean, I just cheated my way through school. It was super hard. Well, what I didn't know is I'm super dyslexic, and all these things that I've since learned. And the teachers, like 80% of my teachers, like half of my teachers taught my parents. They're on their way out. Like they really could care less about like. I don't think Jeremy learns the same as everyone else, right? Like,
Right.
It was like they just kept bumping me down to dumber classes.
And that's been a recent revelation, right?
Yeah.
Like realizing, hey, my brain works differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been super empowering, to know that I'm not dumb. I just thought I was dumb. Like, so as soon as I graduated, like my guidance counselor was like sending me on jobs to be a welder's helper. Like, this is what you're going to be. And I'm like, sports is done. I'm not going to college to play sports. So the cowboy.
So you didn't have any desire to try to do sports in college?
I had an opportunity. And at that time, I was kind of interested in maybe rodeo.
Okay.
And school scared me so much that it was a pretty easy choice to. My Uncle Ricky rode bareback horses, so there's pictures on the walls, and I was like, that's cool. There's girls go to rodeos, and sports is over, and what am I going to do? Like, knowing what we know now about identity, like, you're as a young man, if you don't go to college, you're really searching for, trying to figure out who you're going to become, right? And so I kind of fell back into cowboy. Like I got more interested in the ranch and started helping out again, and sold my Trans Am. I bought a pickup truck and started wearing a cowboy hat to school my senior year, and like knew that I was going to transition into something. And identity meant so much to me, like the jock thing, and now the cowboy thing. Like I got to be somebody. I couldn't just be a kid going to school or a kid getting a job. Like I needed something to stand out.
Right. Okay. So were you going to college or no college?
Nope. I chose to go to Wyoming, to Jackson Hole, and I found out about this guest ranch that let you rodeo.
Okay.
Jackson Hole has a rodeo on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights. They pay your entry fees because they take the guests that stay there for the week to the rodeo, and they get a cheer for you.
Okay.
So, dude, it was like the best
deal
ever, right? And it's like all these college kids work there, college girls, because you have all the services that go with the guest ranch. You have the gals that work cleaning the cabins and cooking and doing the food and stuff, and then we were the cowboys, man.
Yeah.
And the drinking thing, is all I needed was freedom, and the beer thing. Like I'm only 19, but it didn't matter because I got a fake ID. Like it's just that simple. My buddy Aaron's like, here, try this. And back then they're like, yeah, okay. So I got to go to the bar after the rodeo. They had video the rodeo. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. They would video the rodeo, and then they'd play it at the bar on a loop till the bar closed at 2 a.m. in Wyoming. So
this is where like the party, like the drinking really started during this stage.
Socially, yeah. It's like we went to the bar on Wednesday nights after the rodeo and Saturday nights. And you get to see yourself on the TV, the rodeo, and dancing with the girls and learn how to dance. And then we'd go to the KOA campground, which is down the road from where we're at. Because at the Heart 6, the ranch I went to, was a dry ranch. Like, we couldn't drink or anything. So we'd go play pool, listen to jukebox, and do laundry. And drink. But it wasn't like it was a social thing.
Right, okay.
But it was 2 or 3 nights a week. Yeah, for sure.
Now, I'm assuming that was your stepmom still in the picture? Was she still married to your dad?
Here's the kicker.
Yeah.
As soon as I graduate and leave home, they get divorced.
Of course. Okay.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, anyway, I my first year in Wyoming, moved away from home. They get divorced after I leave. And again, I don't remember the exact timeline. I get a phone call on the payphone. Hey, Jeremy, your dad's on the phone, because they would call it mealtime, right? And he's like, hey, I'm coming to see you. And I'm like, cool. And he's like, and I got remarried. And I'm like,
remarried again?
Yeah. And I'm like,
so this is number 4.
Yeah. technically got married to my stepmom, the one we've been talking about, twice. They got divorced and they got remarried.
Okay.
In a very short amount of time while I was gone. So yeah, this is his fourth wife, Trudy, whom he was still married to till he died, whom I'm still very close with, and
Yeah.
we get along great. But yeah, so he's like, I'm bringing her up. I'm like, cool. At this point, I didn't care. I'm like, you go live your life, do whatever you want. I'm out.
Right.
I'm free to move about the country, right? Like, whoever you marry, they can't do anything to me. So I really didn't care. I didn't care that he got remarried again.
Okay.
I was like, cool, you happy? She's a cowgirl and loves horses and packing and hunting. I'm like, great. Go enjoy your life that you've built for yourself.
But at that point, you didn't have to live life with them, like if to your.
No, I never moved home again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're in the rodeo thing. You're the cowboy rock star, starting to drink a little bit more. Did you? What were your relationships like? Like when I listened to you talk about your childhood and your upbringing, and all the moving around, and obviously having situations of loss and that kind of thing. Like, did that show its face within your relationships at all? Did you have like kind of like a surface level relationships where you did you have a lot of close friends? Like, what was that dynamic?
I had a ton of close friends that I'm
Okay.
still friends with today from that first summer.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I had an aptitude for friendship,
Mm.
and I wasn't afraid to move.
Mm.
I didn't have a lot of fear. I had a ton of fear, but on the outside, I was that guy that was like, I always pursued people.
Mm-hmm.
Like the guys that maybe didn't have a lot of friends, I'd be friends with them too.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I just had a phone conversation with my boss from back then, who was like the head wrangler 2 days ago.
Wow.
Like that was, dude, 1992.
Yeah.
Right? And so, still friends with them, but I pursued relationship.
You've always valued
Yeah,
relationships.
because, and with girls, I had this huge mom hole in my life, right? That I didn't know at the time.
Right.
But I'm like, I'm trying to find love. I'm trying to find someone to fill that wound from being abandoned. And I'm like, maybe if I find the right girlfriend or enough girlfriends that will go away. So it's shaping up to set my life on this course of like, I pursue friendships. I'm trying to figure out, and I'm getting good at having girlfriends and how to get girlfriends.
Trying to fill that void, but not realizing probably what you were doing, right?
For sure. And then that job was seasonal. So I went to hunting camp. Hunting camp gets out around Halloween. And then I'm like, now what? And my buddy Rusty's like, let's go to Arizona and rodeo. They rodeo all winter down there, of course, because it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
We had a pocket full of cash from being in the wilderness and not spending any money from hunting camp. So like, let's go to horseshoeing school and get jobs and rodeo on the weekends. We jumped in our trucks and literally drove to Phoenix.
I feel like, when people have those maps of where they've traveled and they put the little pins in the, like I picture these like strings connected to all these pins like going all over the place,
Yeah.
Like that's why I said it's just confusing to me. Like you've been all over the place.
Yeah, and it just, knowing what I know now,
Yeah.
like it served me perfectly. Because I could have these relationships on my terms with men that couldn't hurt me.
Mm.
Right? Girls, if I started having feelings for them, I would go find another one.
Okay. So
And they moved all the time.
would you find yourself ending things with these girls before they would? Like what was that dynamic?
No, I would
like?
always make them do it.
Really?
I didn't want to hurt them.
Okay.
But mostly, dude, it was easy because I would go to Arizona for the winter and rodeo, and then it's a 6-month gig, and then I'd move. So it's like, sorry, I really care about you, but I'm leaving. And they're like, oh, we'll try to make it work. I wouldn't break up with them. I'm like, yeah, we'll make it work, and then you just don't answer the payphone
Right. Okay.
or respond to the letters, right? Like,
So because of what you grew up with, right? What you experienced, you almost found yourself on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like protecting yourself. Yeah. Oh, man.
and the party like turned up a notch in Arizona. It was like rodeo and the guys that were really, really good.
Mm-hmm. How old were you at this time when you're in Arizona?
20,
Okay.
still on a fake ID.
Okay.
Yeah, 19, 20. So the rodeo thing is, and I'll wrap this rodeo thing up real quick.
Yeah.
I liked the lifestyle. Our Rams guys were really good, had sponsorships, and paid my way. The partying went to a different level.
Okay.
We're drinking at noon. We're not having jobs. I'm doing what I need to do to stay awake to drive all night because I was the rookie.
Okay.
And doing things that made me very uncomfortable, but I did them anyway because I loved the lifestyle, man. And it was come and go.
What do you mean uncomfortable?
Things that were in opposition of how I grew up and was raised.
Because you had that religious background.
Yeah, and I knew that the drinking thing I could validate, but some of the other things I was getting into scared me.
Okay.
Deep down, I was like, this isn't good for me. This lifestyle isn't good for me. And I wasn't that good at rodeo. Every time I'd get ready to quit, I'd win a little bit of money that made me think, oh, keep going, you're good. Like, I wasn't good.
Yeah.
I wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But I loved the lifestyle, man. It fit right into the narrative of who I wanted to be, and I wanted to be seen that way. I wanted to be that guy that rolls into town and with my buddies, and you're getting with the girls, and you're fist fighting. And I wasn't very good. I was good at the girl thing. I wasn't very good at fist fighting or riding bucking horses, but my buddies were.
Okay. So were you like the instigator, or are you the one that would stir everything up?
Sometimes they would be like, see those guys over there? Go get in pick a fight. I'm not kidding.
Really?
Yeah, and I'd go over there and say something stupid, and they're like, all right, let's go outside.
Because you can be a smart ass, right?
Yeah, totally. And then we'd go outside, and I would kind of sit there and watch my buddies whip their asses. And the cops would show up and we'd run. I mean, it was a thing. It was what we did.
Yeah.
So the rodeo thing I did for like 3-4 years.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I'm moving to Wyoming, working on ranches, Rodeo Jackson Hole, Rodeo Arizona.
So did you envision, this is my life, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the cowboy thing, or were you not thinking that far ahead?
The cowboy thing, yes. I never thought past the season, right? It was like my whole life, looking back, has been, I'm uncautiously optimistic. I had to be growing up, right? I would never sit and like, this is my life and it sucks. I was always like, where's fun? Where's an escape? And I'm going to run towards it. So this lifestyle of moving every 6 months was perfect, right? Because nothing was, I don't like change. I didn't like grinding it out. That was all scary and high stakes to me. So I just kept moving through my 20s.
So the fascinating thing is, because when I talk to you now, and since we've known each other, you've been a guy that stands out to me as somebody that has vision, like somebody that kind of sees almost prophetically like into the future and gets these visions for whether it's businesses or ministries. I mean, this wild courage thing, right? Like you just have such vision to think forward. But at that time in your life, that didn't really exist, or you weren't tapping into that, right?
No, because it was survival. I was on the run.
Okay.
I didn't know from what at the time. I knew there was something inside of me that said go. And my friend Pat Puckett said that anybody who's ever felt trapped becomes a wanderer. And I was a wanderer. I needed to wander because being trapped was too scary. And I felt trapped for a lot of my life.
And that's where a lot of the pain and the hurt came, right? Okay.
So, yeah, I had a great life, man. And I always got to be... Because when you work at these guest ranches and stuff, like, it's seasonal, and it's always the people that work there are college age. So what do college people do?
Right.
You can read between the lines a little bit, right? But that's what was happening at these places. There were 70, 80 employees at these ranches, which 80% of them, 70% of them were girls. And somebody always had the next day off, so somebody always wanted to party that night, right? Because somebody would have Tuesday and Wednesday off, somebody didn't. So it just was this perfect atmosphere for fun. And I just want to have fun. I didn't want to deal with anything. I didn't like confrontation. I didn't like the thought of grinding a job out. So I got to go be a cowboy every 6 months and move around.
So looking back on it now, right, and just you're obviously very, I would consider a very healthy individually, emotionally, spiritually. Can you identify? That was my escapism. Like that's how I was just kind of numbing out. I didn't want to think about that
For
stuff.
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why it made me fun guy, because I would only get so far.
Right.
In any of my relationships, right, with the girl, could only get so far, and then I'd be like, ooh, I'm really starting to like this girl. And that's been something I've had to work through is, like, I dated some really, really amazing girls and trashed their hearts or whatever, and in my own brokenness, we bring our own brokenness and crap to the table, and that's I've had to deal with with that in in the later years of my healing journey of like, man, that wasn't very cool,
Yeah.
But the stakes were too high, and I wasn't built or ready for real relationship. And I kind of tried to have some, and one in particular, a girl I dated for world record for me. Like, we made it through the seasonal transition. So we were together for over a year, and I was shoeing horses in Wickenburg, Arizona, and training, riding colts, and she came down to visit me, and we were laying on the couch, and my phone rang. I had a house phone now, right? Like, I was uptown, no more pay phones. And me and my buddies were in the house, and anyway, I got this phone call, and this girl's like, I don't know if you remember me, but my name is Renee. We met at a wedding a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago. I just wanted to let you know that you have a baby girl. So this was the first time in my life, like, this lifestyle is catching up to me.
So in that moment, when you heard that, what were you thinking? What happened? What did you do?
I ran into my bedroom. I said, I remember telling Renee, I'm like, I need a few days. She's like, I want to send you some pictures. And she tells me, she's like, I don't need anything from you. It was very hard for her to track me down.
Yeah.
Because we met at a wedding that she wasn't even at the wedding. It was at a bar after the
wedding.
wedding.
That was the only time you...
She knew my first name and the motel I was staying at. That was it, in a different state than where I was even living. So it took her some doing to track me down.
Yeah.
And she let me off the hook. She's like, I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you. I don't want money. You need to be involved. I just felt like it wasn't fair that you not know. How dare I not? Like, she took the high road on this. Right?
How old was your daughter at the time?
I want to say a year.
Okay.
And again, that give or take. So, because it was hard for her to track me, find me.
Yeah.
Jeremy from this date, this motel. It was a wedding party is how she ended up, tracking my friend's wife down. But, so I'm like, I need a few days. I go back out, my girlfriend is like, what was that? And I'm like, she's like, you've been trying. Because I got off the phone, and I'm like, I was like freaking out, right?
Yeah. Like,
the gig's up. What am I going to do? I can't even manage myself. And I told her that my cousin got in a wreck on a four-wheeler and was badly injured or something. And then she ended up sending me some pictures, and I put them in my sock drawer. And my girlfriend came down and did my laundry to surprise me, and went to put my socks away and found the pictures. And the only reason I even bring that up is secrets became a very big part of my life.
Okay. Because you didn't want to be too vulnerable, right? Like,
I could.
Yeah.
I needed everyone to like me.
Because if they got to know you, they wouldn't?
I don't know, but I couldn't risk it.
You didn't want to find out?
No.
Yeah.
Because the family unit outside of, like, the safety, and we'll get into this a little later, but of my grandma and grandpa's house, like, family didn't feel that safe to me, but my friends did. And if I kept it to a certain level, they couldn't hurt me. So I was all in with my friends. I was all in with that girl. Right? And so this was, like, devastating for her to be like, you lied to me. I can't, like, of course it's beautiful. I want you to be a part of her life, but why would you lie to me? Like, why couldn't you tell me, right? And it's because I needed everyone to think this way of me. I needed, everyone to approve of me, and this, like, was this huge wrinkle. And ultimately I told them, like, well, I'm coming to Wyoming for this summer. I'll drive up there and we'll do a test, and then we'll go on from there. So I go to Wyoming, talk about scary. I don't tell anyone. I don't tell anyone in my life about this.
The only one that knows is, were you still dating your girlfriend at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I drive up to Montana and meet Renee and Gabby, it's my beautiful daughter, and do the DNA test. And she's like, "I'll let you know." Well, the lab results have my address, right, in Wyoming. So,
Okay.
Yeah, one day, a couple weeks later, hour long, I get this big vanilla envelope with, "Yep, you're the dad." Which I knew as soon as I saw her, right?
Yeah.
Because she looks more like me than at that point than her mom. I think still. And then it was like, now what? And I remember telling the people I worked with, Grant and Jane, and being scared to tell my family because the religious thing of like premarital sex and the shame of all of it, not towards Gabby, but just on myself that I was going to feel for my family, which the opposite was true. My parents were so loving, and my mom and would fly over to Billings to see her, and you know what I mean. And my dad loved her very much, and my sister and my wife now, Mary, like they, I mean, she's a huge part of our life. But the one of the things I'm grateful for is that Renee and I were never together, so we never really had any problems. There was never any friction between us. It was always about Gabby. It was never about her and I.
Okay.
But I would send money, but I wasn't a dad.
Yeah.
Because my lifestyle was still, nothing changed.
Okay.
I had a daughter that I felt financially responsible for, and I felt guilty about that I wasn't a part of her life.
So where did she grow up?
In Billings, Montana.
Okay. And then you just kept...
I'd go bounce over there and see her when I could. My mom would go fly her over to Boise and meet I mean, if it wasn't for my mom, I don't know what my relationship with her would be like, to be honest with you. Because I was on the run still. And so it was, I just felt guilty all the time.
So you just kept doing what you were doing.
Yep.
You're doing the same lifestyle, traveling, competing still.
No, I quit rodeo in like 1994, and then really got into the horse training and the roping, and that kind of filled that spot of my identity, right? Because I had to be somebody other than who I really was.
Still doing the party thing?
The party thing is full-blown social heavy drinking at this point. Like,
okay.
I just surrounded all my friends. That's all we did. That was part of the lifestyle, like this. And the crazy thing is, in the cowboy world, it's kind of celebrated. Like, you work hard, you fight, and you drink whiskey. I mean, it's part of the deal, you know? And so, I just fit in. It wasn't like, it was just part of the deal.
Right. And
move. I was working for the Rockefeller family in Jackson, Wyoming, their private family retreat. And a girl I knew said, "Hey, my boss is buying this ranch in Tinsley, Wyoming, and is looking for a horse manager." And I'm like 29, have a daughter, and this is only a few hours from Billings, from where Gabby is. So I'm like, maybe it's time to settle down. I have some nice artwork I've acquired that's bounced around the back of my truck in between moves. I'm like, how cool would it be to have a place to hang it up? So I go interview for this job to manage this horse ranch. And I'm becoming a pretty decent horse colt guy at this point. And I get the job. And it's a year-round job with a salary. Guy built me a 5,000 square foot brand new house with this huge heated indoor arena.
Yeah.
And like a checkbook to go build this horse program. Very wealthy guy. So I'm like, I'm gonna get my life together.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of like, the writing on the wall was like, you know, when you start turning 30, you're like, okay. People kind of give you a pass for your 20s to figure it out, right?
Right.
So I felt some pressure to like get my crap together.
So was this you kind of settling down a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, huge.
You were ready to not travel as much?
Yeah. Okay. I was like, I think I'm ready for this. And then everyone's so proud of me, right? Like, all my family and friends and coming to visit. And I got this beautiful place at the foot of the Bighorn Mountains and crushing it.
Yeah.
And I'm about 12 miles south of a town of 120 people or something, Tinsley, Wyoming. So it's a little tiny town. What I wasn't ready for was the shock of being by myself. because I've always been around a ton of people.
Okay.
Always.
Right.
I always lived with my friends that I worked with and partied with. Like it was a frat club.
So that was completely gone overnight.
Gone.
Okay.
The minute I moved to that ranch was the 1st of January. And my house wasn't done, so I was living in the boss's basement. It was a nice house, but
Yeah.
nothing like the basement that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. No
Those
snakes.
snakes.
Yeah.
And the newness and excitement of the brand new truck parked outside and the construction of my new house like wore off in a week. And I'm like, what the hell have I got myself into?
Interesting.
I'm in isolation. I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
I'm good at making friends. There's no friends to be made. I live in the middle of nowhere. So the winter, I had friends come visit me. Like my friends from Arizona would fly in or drive in. Like I had a ton of friends come stay, which helped me get through that first winter.
Okay.
And the newness and excitement still. Springtime comes, get invited to a few Brandons, get to meet people. There's a couple bars in town, spend some time there. But that's when I started like drinking by myself for the first time in my life. First summer I went to a ton of roping, so that kind of scratched the social itch. I went to all these Northern Range ropings with all my buddies that I'd met over the years, and I'd go get Gabby, and she'd come stay with me, and I'd kind of keep my crap together then.
Okay. How old was she during that time?
Little, 3-4 years old, 5 maybe, and then the winter came, and dude, like the drinking. And I remember being like, why? Like, I have a dream job. I'm putting together this nice string of horses. I get a ride for a living, a salary, which I'm not used to. I think I had benefits and health insurance for the first time in my life, right?
Yeah.
I gotta back up real quick. I got a DUI right out of high school.
Okay.
And it wasn't that big a deal. Like, I got a DUI driving my buddy's truck, and it's like you paid a fine, and then I lost my license for a few months, but I was in hunting camp, so I was like, okay. Right before I moved to Wyoming, actually I got another DUI in Arizona.
Okay.
In between now and when I was 19.
So we'll make a note of that. That's DUI number 2.
Yeah. Well, right like the week before I moved to Wyoming to get this fancy job, I'm in Phoenix, my farewell tour party, and we've been in it for about 3 days. And my buddies who are like professional party guys are like, we're staying right here because we're too drunk to drive. And I'll never forget saying, I'll pilot this thing. And 15 minutes later, being pulled over on the freeway in Phoenix with DUI number 3. And I'm supposed to leave the next week to go start my new life at this job in Wyoming.
Okay.
So this weight of this is like, I'm on the run. And I'm like, secrets, right? Like, I don't tell anybody. So I go up to Wyoming, 1.5 years go by, my driver's license expires. I go to get a new driver's license, and they're like, you got to call this number in Arizona. They're not giving me a driver's license. So now I have this job, all this thing, and I can't get a driver's license. Or my boss changes insurance companies. It's like,
shit.
I need your driver's license for a new insurance policy. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm like, oh, it's expired. I need to go get it. I just would make excuses that, like, once a month, like, hey, need driver's license. Oh, man, I need to take the time to run to Warland to whatever, right? So I don't do it. And then summer turns into winter, and the girlfriend scene's slim pickings, right? There's nothing going on in Tin Sleep, Wyoming. I'm just spending a lot of time at the bar to the point where I have a tab there that exceeds my monthly income.
Really?
Yeah.
And you were making good money at that time?
Yeah, for
Very
a cowboy. Yeah, I was spending more at the bar because the one thing, too, with meeting friends is I was real generous when I drank. So there'd be tourists stopping in town, and I'd be like, it's on me, woo, party. And then the bar owner at the time really liked me, and because I spent a lot of time in it,
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
so I did end up meeting this girl there that her parents retired there, and we started hanging out a lot. I knew that we were too much alike in that we were, in hindsight, but we were both hiding, running from something,
Okay.
and we found each other. So the drinking was like her and I were getting into it bad,
Okay.
like daily. But this DUI thing, I got to go to Arizona and deal with it. So I make up a reason why I got to go to Arizona. I need to get a little knee surgery done. So I'm like, well, I got to go to Arizona and get this knee surgery, and then I'm going to go to court.
Mhm.
Right. When I'm down there, I go to court, and I have to go do some jail time, get that out of the way.
Mm.
Come right while I'm down there rehabbing my knee, I see the writing on the wall with me and this girl. It's not good. And she's drinking a lot and calling my buddy Aaron's house where I'm staying at in the middle of the night. Like, I miss you, I need him, you know, just drunk.
Mhm.
And so,
So you wanted out of that relationship at this point.
once I got away from
Yeah,
there,
okay.
because I'm like, this isn't good for either of us, right? We're very codependent, and our lives are surrounded by getting super drunk every night
Right.
in isolation. And I was even without her, I was drinking so much that I was like passing blood in places I shouldn't have been, right? Not eating, like, and I couldn't figure out why. Again, I have this perfect life.
So let's go there real quick, and then we'll go back to the girlfriend. But when, you know, we've talked about this, where you see somebody in life that seems like they have everything, right? They have their stuff together, they are living the dream. I mean, you're living in this mansion, the trucks, making decent money, you want to be the cowboy. Like, everything from the outside looks fantastic. So what was going on the inside of you, though? Like, what was driving all this drinking? And can you tap into that a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm on the cover of a magazine. I mean, dude, I mean, it's everything. Everything that I'd worked hard for. Because even with all the drinking, I was a hard worker.
Yeah.
I never didn't show up for work. I might not even go to bed the night before, but I would always show up for work, right? And I don't know why. It was a mystery to me. Like, I remember, like...
Did you think about it? Or was that not even...
Oh, yeah. I'd be like, I don't want to do this.
Like, why am I not fulfilled? Why am I not happy? Like, you would have those thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was always like, well, once I get here, and then
Right.
I get there. And we found on this podcast with a lot of the guys who talked to you,
Yeah.
you talk about, and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for. I thought it would be fulfilling. And it wasn't.
Mm.
And it wasn't fulfilling. And it was the opposite. I never felt more alone on top of the mountain because I was by myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why I was drinking so much.
But you questioned it. Like, you had those thoughts, like,
Well,
why am I doing this?
When there's blood coming out of you,
Yeah.
you're like, this is insane. You've got to stop doing this. And then by 4:00 that afternoon, after feeling crappy all day, I could get there mentally to why. I could validate it.
So what did you come up with? What was the validation?
I was alone. I mean, it's vague now. I don't even remember. I just remember when you're an addict, you just validate yourself into it, or shame. I did it yesterday. I already blew it. I'm already wrecked, right? I'm like, God, just like, I'm hiding from him, right?
Did you carry a lot of shame at that point?
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was raised so in opposition of this lifestyle and the things I was doing that it was very conflicting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get out of it.
No. I think maybe, I'd get to a place where I'd get so sick that I maybe white knuckle it for 3 or 4 days. Then you get feeling better. And then again, I look always an optimist. I was always like, okay, that's going to be fun. That's going to be good. And that was part of the deal, right? Like, drinking was part of me having fun. And like, I couldn't imagine a life without doing that.
So were you able to think ahead at that time? Like, okay, so you weren't even going to where does my life go from here?
No, because I'm in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta get through tomorrow.
Mm.
But I'm gonna have a good attitude about it. Because the opposite of that is like thinking about anything other than tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
which seemed too scary. The stakes are way too high.
Mm.
It's always forward,
Mm-hmm.
always forward. So yeah, I break up with that girl while I'm in Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
and then not too long after that, she ended up committing suicide.
Mm.
And that was too much.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't talked about this outside of a few close friends because I haven't really dealt with it, because my whole life was built on anything painful, you just move on from it and like literally sweep under the rug. And it's something that's been buried for a long time.
Right.
To the point of like, the truth of the matter is that when I got back to Wyoming, I quit that job and left the state.
Mm. Because she that's where you guys were hanging out.
Yeah, I couldn't. The thought of, yeah, it was too much, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was too much. And I have, up until this point, made other excuses why that job ended. And but the reality is that it was a small town, and I couldn't deal with it, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I left. And it was very painful, because I thought I was letting everyone down.
Right.
The people that took the chance on me, that hired me, to my parents, to my aunts and uncles who came and visited me, everyone was real proud of me. And I felt like, really, for the first time in my life, because, Jeremy finally got it together. And the pain was high enough and the stakes were too high that I was like, I don't care, I gotta go.
So that's what I was just gonna say, is like that in a lot of ways was the dream situation, but the pain was so much that you're like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And again, not really, it's all hindsight.
Yeah.
I mean, in the moment I was like, there's no way I can stay here. And I knew it wasn't good for me to be there anymore. And there's a whole bunch of other circumstances, but at the end of the day, I'd interviewed for this job when I took the job in Ten Sleep. At the same time, I interviewed for a job in Prescott, and I couldn't remember the people's names, but I remember that he was an ER doctor. So I called him out of the blue. I called the hospital, like, Matt work there? They're like, yeah, there's a couple. I'm like, they have a ranch, they have horses. Here's my number. Literally, like an hour later, Matt calls me. He's like, hey, man, what the hell's Wyoming? I'm like, I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I know you probably filled that job, because it was a few years ago. He's like, actually, I just fired the guy. He sent me overnighted me some money, because I didn't even have a truck.
Yeah.
My buddy Bob Blackwell picked me up, my horses, my horse, everything I owned, and my horse trailer, and drove me to Prescott, Arizona, where I had a house waiting for me, a job, truck. I mean, it was like a godsend.
Yeah.
And then everything started changing, because there's a lot of people around.
Okay.
I started making friends. I started putting on ropings. I mean, I wasn't drinking by myself as much because I had friends. So it felt like the 20s me, even though I'm in my early 30s now.
Right.
But I felt so much more alive. And again, dude, Prescott is I mean, they have Whiskey Row in Prescott, downtown Prescott, for a reason, right? It's a whole downtown full of bars.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at the Ten Sleep Saloon by myself with the bartender anymore.
Yeah.
I did pay my bill at the bar before I left,
Okay.
with some of the money that Matt gave. I wasn't going to leave town. It was a big bill.
I was gonna say, I don't even want to know what that bill
It
was.
was big. It was most of the money that he sent me, but
Yeah.
old Bob there in the bar, I wasn't going to stiff it. So I go to Prescott, dude, and it's game on.
Which probably knowing what you know now was not the healthiest environment for you to be going.
No,
into
but I
that.
felt like freedom to me, man.
So you're running
trapped.
again.
Not trapped on that ranch in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
You're suppressed. Let's get rid of the pain. Let's go here. Let's avoid that. Let's move forward.
Yep.
And move on, right?
Yep. So dating a couple of, well, not at the same time, but dating this girl. In the meantime, I have this horse trainer friend, Ben Balo, who is in between facilities, and I have a covered arena, and it's winter, and it's kind of snowing and raining. He's like, hey, can I come over and bring my horses and clients and ride out of your barn while mine's being built over here? I'm like, heck yeah, come on. And in comes my driveway, this big horse trailer full of horses, and this little gal hops out, and I'm like, man, I'm impressed that she can drive that big rig full of horses. And she gets out. Well, this is one of Ben's assistants named Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary and I hit it off and became friends. And Ben always had a ton of people that was working for him and riding with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it became my friend group. And Mary was part of that. So we'd go out to the bars together and dinner together and socially hang out. And I had a girlfriend. My girlfriend would come, and we all hung out and were friends. And
your girlfriend was friends with Mary and
yeah,
all in the same friend group.
Yeah. And I'd break up with that girlfriend, and Mary'd be the person I'd lope circles with and talk to and tell her, and she'd always be uplifting and supportive. And that friendship just kind of grew until I'd get drunk and I'd ask her out, and then I'd get married.
While you had the other girlfriend?
Yeah.
Okay, that was done.
Yeah. And then she'd always be like, yeah, sure, give me a call. And then I'd get sober, and then I'd chicken out. Because Mary's the girl that you don't mess with.
Mm.
They called her Sweet Mary. I was like, I'm not good enough for Sweet Mary. Like, you don't mess with her. You know what I mean? Like, so that was kind of the routine. Is I get drunk, she'd drive me sober because she didn't get drunk, and
she didn't party at all.
She'd go up this and she'd drink half a margarita.
Okay. She
was the queen of drinking half of whatever she ordered, and that was it.
And she was fully aware of your lifestyle.
Oh, yeah, 100%. She saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
And me not trying to impress her, so she, I guess I've never even thought of this as like the first girl that ever really got to see the real me, like really exposed, because I wasn't trying to get with her or be with her. Other than, again, I would ask her out, and then the next day I'd be embarrassed and I wouldn't talk to her. And then finally one time I did. I said, hey, you want to go out? She's like, yeah, but you've always asked me this and you never do. So I'm like, all right.
Oh, so she called you out on your
BS? Because it was like 5 times it happened probably.
Yeah.
And Monty would just be in the truck with us shaking his head like, you're an idiot. So I went over to dinner to her house, and I was super nervous, and I was sober.
Yeah.
And she made dinner, and we watched a movie, and it just turned from this friendship into this, like, she started helping me. I put on these ropings in my facility. People would come from like 5 or 6 states, and we'd have these huge parties, and people would camp out, and I mean, it was fun. And Mary, super organized, she would do the books and help keep scores and all of that. Mm-hmm. So she was fully engaged in my lifestyle, and if you ask her, she was attracted, because she's very reserved and quiet, and she was attracted to this bigger-than-life guy who was the life of the party, had all the friends. I was the opposite of her. She was opposite of me, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think she was intrigued. She never dated anybody like me, and I had it going on, and I was a go-getter, and
she didn't mind all the partying and theatrics.
Because she saw me get up every morning and go to work and work hard, and so it was like, it wasn't really a flag until, out of the blue, I take her to Wyoming. We're going to Montana to a roping, swing by Jackson Hole, and I proposed to her. I never even told this girl I loved her.
Really?
I told her, I love you, and would you marry me in the same breath?
How long were you dating at that point?
Less than a year.
Okay. But you knew each other for longer than that?
Yeah. A couple years.
Okay.
So we get engaged.
She was like, yeah, let's do it.
Go to the roping. Our friend Meg plans the wedding before we even get back to Arizona. My friends Grant and Jane, where I used to work, are like, we stop and tell them, show them the ring. They're like, come get married at the ranch. They do weddings there. It's like the Grand Tetons with this indoor ring that's full of windows on one side. Like, so we have this fairy tale wedding. But before we get married, the ultimatums come. Like, your drinking's a kind of a thing, right?
Okay.
We're going to pre-marriage counseling, which I hated, right? And the drinking thing comes up, and I'm so full of shame. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I'd be like, I remember like getting in these huge fights on my way home from pre-marriage counseling. I'm like, you rat, you threw me under the bus with the drinking thing with our pastor. Because I started going to church with her, right?
Yeah.
But I'm still living my lifestyle. But it didn't feel like Kensley because I'm not doing it alone.
It was more acceptable.
Social.
Yeah. Did you think you had a problem?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you still, like, the blood and were you still at that point? Okay.
No, I was taking better care of myself. I had a lot more going on. So I was much more responsible. So I wasn't as bad. But I was eating. I didn't eat a lot when I was by myself because I don't cook.
Yeah.
And then I discovered wine, and then I started loving cooking because I'd drink a bottle of wine and splash a little here.
Yeah. Right. Gives you a reason to open up a bottle.
Yeah. I'd buy 2 bottles of wine. I'd cook with an ounce of it and drink the other 2 bottles in the preparation and eating of it. So I
yeah.
Anyway, so
Mary is triggering you going through this premarital counseling,
well, she's
right? Because she's like, hey,
if we're getting married, dude, like, is this drinking thing gonna be a thing? I'm like, are you kidding me? When we get married and start having kids, of course I'm gonna stop.
Okay.
I'm just fun. I'm like, you know me. I'm fun, roping, weekend party guy, right? Like, of course, when we get married and we have kids, it's gonna stop.
Did you believe that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought I had a problem, but I thought that I had control over it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
So we get married. We got engaged July 1st, got married September 23rd. So very short engagement.
Yeah.
Because I'm 33, 34 years old when we get married. So like, what are we waiting for? You're the one, right? And she's younger than me.
So she was convinced though, like she's good. She's like, okay, he told me he's gonna turn it off.
When we get married, we get home from our honeymoon, and I'm full-time shoeing horses now, and still riding a few colts, but mostly I really have honed in on the horse shoeing business, making good money. Getting married scared me. Secrets, right? It really scared me. So I started to find this little routine where I'd go to Circle K in the morning. Instead of getting coffee, I'd get a big gulp with like Diet Dr. Pepper and one of them little bottles of vodka. And I'd just maintain. And I mean, drive, shoe, didn't affect because I wouldn't get drunk. But I remember Mary, I'd come home and she's like, are you all right? I'm like, I'm fine, I'm tired. And I'd get pissed at her and be a jerk, you know? Like, how dare you question me? She'd be like, you seem off. Well, I've been drinking all day.
So she didn't know you were drinking, she just thought you were
lied. Well, if she suspected it, I would just lie to her, and then I'd beat her up. Not physically, but I'd beat her up for questioning me. Like, I just shod 8 horses. I'm tired. Give me a break. Make me some dinner.
So did you think you had a problem at that point, or was it because before you said you actually thought you could turn it off?
I still thought I could. I'm like, I thought that marriage would be the reason why I would turn it off.
Yeah.
And it's not the reason. It's another mountaintop. I got here, right? I'm married. I thought I'd feel strongly enough about my wife that I would stop this behavior. But now I just got to hide it.
Which then is more guilt and shame, right?
Dude. Yeah. But not enough for me to make any changes. Early on in our marriage, we're not married a year. Super Bowl Sunday, I'll never forget, because today's Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah. Get a message from this guy in California. And he's like, hey, I got your number from Grant Gallagher. I'm building this big equestrian place, and he said you and your new wife are the people I need to hire. Call me back. And I'm like, we're going to buy the place we were at. Like, we're set. Mary's training horses. I'm shoeing. We have a nice little life. We're going to do this business together. I'm like, I'm Super Bowl Sunday. The next morning, he calls me again. He's like, hey, this is Rick. Left you a message yesterday. I want to talk about this opportunity. I'm like, I don't know, man. We're pretty happy. He's like, will you hear me out? I'm like, okay. He's like, I have this 1,200 acre subdivision. It's raw land. I want to build a state-of-the-art equestrian community in lieu of another golf course in between Victor and Driggs, Idaho, which is on the other side of the Grand Tetons from Jackson Hole, but on the Idaho side. And he's like, you come very highly recommended. I'd love to talk to you about taking this job. You let me know. I said, we got pretty good right now. He's like, let me know what you need to move here, and I'm going to give you a lot. I mean, it's going to be a great opportunity. You're going to design and build this place. So Mary and I did some math, threw out this huge 6-figure number, which is double more than anything I've ever seen in my life. And he's like, okay, when can you start? So a month later, we moved to Victor, Idaho, rent this cute little house, all our horses, we buy it. We're like, we're rich. We're probably going to be able to retire in like a year. Is what we're thinking, right?
Yeah.
We buy a new truck and a new horse trailer and marry a new car, like, because this is crazy money that this guy's paying us.
Yeah.
I remember moving up there, sagebrush field, and this creek and these trees and beautiful mountains, and like, this is it. This is where I can turn this around. Another fresh start, another opportunity to get it together, right?
The dream scenario.
Yeah. And this is like the 3rd dream job I've had, right? 4th, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is it. I can feel it. Plugged into church, like spiritually, I feel like I'm like, it's not religion anymore. Like I'm trying to figure out who God is to me and not because of how I grew up. So we have this amazing church in Jackson Hole, Pastor Mike, and we're really getting fed there. The pressure of the jobs, we start building this facility. Mary and I get to drive around with, he's like, I want within 500 miles, this facility to be the nicest facility within 500 miles. No budget. So we're driving around, look at all these places, like dream job, right?
Yeah.
And the drinking, I'm doing pretty good. Like, again, I'll drink some wine, make some dinner.
But no more like going to the market in the morning.
Not during the day.
Okay.
Because again, it's like a fresh start. I don't want to get into that routine.
So you did scale it back a little bit.
Yeah, but Mary's like, hey, we're going to have a baby soon. Like, we get pregnant pretty quick once we get up there. She's like, you're going to stop drinking when we have a kid, right? I'm like, well, of course. Like, yeah, well, yeah. Like, I'm not drinking that much anyway. And I was drinking more than she knew, right? But it wasn't like that, like it had been. So I'm still hiding it, but again, nothing like it was. So she gets pregnant, and I go to a bluegrass festival at the ski hill, and she's not into that, so I went by myself and got really drunk and just enjoying, beautiful day, music. I get home and it's obvious. And I do my usual attacks, like, what are you talking about? I can't, I work hard, all the reasons, like, she's like in the living room, pregnant, crying, like, turns it on herself. Like, what am I not doing? What am I not enough of? That you need to go medicate and do this. And she's like brokenhearted at herself, like that she's not enough. And that's the day that my secrets, my inner source of pain in me not understanding why I can't do or do the things that I do kind of just came up and out. And I just remember like feeling so bad for her, like, this isn't your fault. I don't know what's wrong with me. To the next sentence being, if you knew what I've been through, and if you've given him as many blowjobs as I have, you would understand the way that I am. It's not your fault. And I almost remember like it was sobering, like, oh shit.
That just came out.
It's out. and it's not anything I'd thought of. It's not anything that I consciously like processed. I'm 35. I'm like, never had I talked to anyone about it. Never had I let myself go there. But because of the situation of seeing my wife like that, and her taking this on as her own, I think it just had to come out. And I wasn't prepared for it. And I couldn't put it back in. It was out there. And I think I ran out the room and went and slept in my truck down by the river. Like it was, I thought for sure, because the shame of all that is, who could love me? If you only knew me, right? There's no way you could love me.
You just exposed yourself.
Yeah. And living with that kind of shame for that long, it isn't something that you can prepare for. Like you either don't. That's why most people go. It just stays a secret, right? And I would have happily kept it a secret my whole life. Looking back now, like what a miracle, because that day my life started to change. We never really talked about it again. I think she tried to probably. One day I'll get Mary on here, and I can't wait for her to tell her side of this whole story of how she experienced our marriage and where it is today, because it's its whole other redemption story, right?
Was that, and that would be real neat. Was that something that you thought about ever, or was that something that you just buried so far in there and then it just happened to come out?
I never thought about it.
It wouldn't cross your mind.
It was something that was there.
Yeah.
But I honestly like thought it was like not a big deal. Like I to this day I can't really describe to you what it felt like. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
To this lifestyle, and it's but not yet. It didn't. Like I said, she probably tried to bring it up and nothing. Well, fast forward, baby's born, like they're still like, you're gonna quit drinking when we have a baby, right? Yeah. But I couldn't, especially now. Now it changed things inside of me of like, you're a gross, like who would want to be your friend? Who would love you knowing what your wife knows now? Like where's this gonna go, right? So there's a lot of fear involved with a lot of shame. And where things really changed was we were at, and I'm still drinking. I'm just getting better at hiding it. And I'm getting better at spending more time alone. And I'm getting better at avoiding my wife and being at home. So we go to this like Bible study or whatever with some of our friends, and we're driving home. Mary's driving us home in her car, and I had just gotten a BlackBerry and gotten Facebook. And one of the guys that sexually abused me sent me a Facebook friend request. And I now know what it is, but I went into had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Like Mary has told me kind of what happened. So I remember we got home, pulled into the garage, and I showed her, and I think we had talked about enough that she knew who that was. And I just remember like humming and rocking back and forth in the car, and like she couldn't get me out of the car. She couldn't like talk to me. She tried to call my dad, couldn't get a hold of him. She called Pastor Mike. It's like 1 a.m. at this point, right? And I'm just like forever just rocking back and forth, like just seeing his name and his face, like
just bringing back all that stuff.
So finally, they were able to talk me out of the car, get me on the couch, and then I never really wanted to talk about it after that, because it was just like too much, right? So life kind of went on. We had a baby, brand new house.
So real quick,
yeah.
So that, and I just bring this up because it seems like with a lot of your conversations with men over the years, and leading this charge in a lot of ways, this isn't as uncommon as we would think.
So in my tier 1 group of friends, if that makes sense, now that I've been pretty open about my story,
Sure.
65% of them have come to me
Mm-hmm.
privately, individually, and I would never out them
Mm-hmm.
and been like, yeah. And the people, I've just, it's mind boggling.
Yeah.
How many guys men have had this experience as a child?
Right. It's heartbreaking, but I think a lot of times in society, like we just think of like women going through this, but the reality is,
They've done a much better job talking about it.
Sure.
Women are much more brave in this quest to talk about it, deal with it, put it into it, hold people accountable.
Yeah.
And it didn't just happen to me by older kids.
Mm-hmm.
There was just this time back in my childhood where we were kind of floating between stepmoms, and I was floating around family that I was just exposed to people older and situations that I was actually raped by a woman that was 10 years older than me. Which is weird because to say that as a man, it just doesn't. I've really struggled over the years saying that. But that's what it was. Something was stolen from me by her.
Right.
I'm not even gonna say I hated it. That's what's effed up about this whole thing, is like, it was just like the other things. It was like, this is what I gotta do to be friends with you. Okay, I'll do it. And then you just hop up and you go on with riding your bikes. It seems so normal to me. I didn't know that it didn't happen to everyone else. I thought it was part of the deal.
Right.
So to be in these situations with these people, I'm like, oh, is this what I have to do to be friends with you? Okay, well, let's do that so that we can move on with this.
Right.
So that's kind of how I think it happens, and then the damage is done, right? Like,
well, it's all that trauma, but you're not even associating it as trauma because you don't know, right?
you don't know. It shows up so much later in your life and in relationships and in your marriage and the way we do, why we do the things we do, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then my resentment towards my mom, like, this happened on your watch. Where were you? And my dad, you chasing down your dreams of building a ranch was more important to you than knowing what was going on with your wife for 10 years and the abuse that she was putting me through, right? And if Mom, if you didn't leave me, I wouldn't be with these people. This happened on your watch. Where were you? Does no one care? No one must care about me.
Right. And all this happened later in life.
Well, then it starts making sense, right? Like, why do I gotta have so many friends?
Yeah.
Why do I always have to have a girlfriend? Why do I always have to be with people?
Right.
It was shaped by that. And then babysitters, like, I've said this before, if it would have happened once, it would have raised a flag. Dude, this happened to me over the years, often, in different states by different people. So that's why to me it was like normal. I thought, well, yeah, this is just how they've grown up.
Right.
You do this and we can move on.
Right.
Babysitters, I mean, I just thought it was normal.
Yeah.
So, you know something's broken inside you, but you don't know what. And we don't have the tools, we don't talk about it to get to it, right?
Right. And now you're having these events later on in life where this stuff's starting to come out, it's starting to be exposed. You're in the car, these are things that you've never processed through.
Yeah, and it's so much trauma shows up all at once from a picture. And it's God way of protecting us, I guess. Like, it shut me down. And the crazy thing is it didn't all come at once. Like, and over the last 10 years journey I've been on in this healing journey, memories have come up of different occasions, different times. Like, if it all came at once, I think that's where people really off themselves.
Right.
It's because it's too much at one time. and so it's fragmented, right?
Sure.
And it started with the one that happened the most and the most often, and then it's escalated over the years of like, oh, I forgot about
Yeah.
my friend and her sister, what she used to make me and her little sister do and watch. You know what I mean? Like
Jeez.
jacked up stuff, man, that there's no way it doesn't affect you.
Right.
But if we don't talk about it and talk to someone, and I'm not suggesting you get on a podcast or on YouTube, and I'm just saying somebody's got to go first. Somebody's got to give us permission to have these conversations, and I've found this to be true in my friend groups that have heard my story, and people that have heard my story elsewhere that have reached out to me, and I this is why I do this. This is why I'm doing this today.
Yeah.
Because a month ago, I got a message from somebody I don't know that heard my story and said, "Thank you."
Mm-hmm.
For the first time in my life, I don't feel alone. And that was all. That was like, how dare I not use my voice to give somebody hope that, if nothing else, that they don't feel alone. Like, so it's pretty easy to get over. Yeah, and I have such an amazing support system around me, and obviously my wife, that I'll go first. I don't care, man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. So, yeah, if it would have been once, I think it would have been like, wow, this happened to me when I was little, but because it happened so often, it just was like, yeah, it's part of the deal.
Right.
So after the whole car incident and the drinking picked up a notch, and it was, I think winter was coming on, and we had the subdivision, we had the arena open, and I volunteered to plow the roads because we got a lot of snow.
Okay.
So I'd get up at like 4 in the morning to go plow roads so people could get out of their driveways to go to work in the subdivision. And I'd start drinking like Baileys in my coffee because I plowed snow for like 4 hours.
So did you, after that car incident, was that just kind of swept under the rug a little bit, or like to the side, and you just kept moving forward?
I think I would just
Okay.
I would spend less and less time with my wife and my newborn son.
Mm-hmm.
I really started to isolate, and that job gave me the excuse to consume me.
Okay.
I'd make up reasons why I needed to be gone. And I was the big man in town, man. Like, this was a big deal for this little ag community to have this facility, and so I loved that feeling. But inside, man, I was getting really good at drinking and nobody knowing it. I could just get to a place where I knew where if I did any more, it'd get obvious, and I could just do enough to stay there all day.
So did Mary think you stopped at that point?
Sometimes I'd get home and I'd slur,
Okay.
or I'd get the hiccups, and she would know, and I would deny it, and I would verbally abuse her. How dare you? See how hard I'm working.
Yeah.
So I would never be like, admit it, ever. I would pass out in the front lawn, and she'd come out and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, I would still never admit it. Like,
Yeah.
it was always her fault. It was always, and if it did, I'd be like, "Well, you're nagging me all the time." You know what I mean? Like, I was that guy. It was just painful to me to this day to talk about. That hurts me more than the other stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because here's this girl that I moved and snatched out of her environment in Arizona and take her to where she didn't know anybody, and she has a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
now is dealing with this monster.
Well, there's probably a little bit of her, like you said, we can have her on here at some point, but there's probably a little bit of her that doesn't want to know, right? Like she wants to believe, I would think, that this wasn't a problem as well. I mean, she's sitting there with your son, and you have this picturesque life from the outside. And,
Oh, dude, I mean, a house that we can only afford with that job.
yeah.
I can sit in my Easy Boy and look out our huge picture window and watch them grooming the ski hill at night.
Yeah.
Targhee. I mean, it's the life We have heated indoor. We can ride all winter. We have
Yeah.
access to. I mean, we go to church and we're like show up and happy shiny people. I called us, and inside we hated each other. Our life sucked. Like I would go to church and then she would drop me back off at work, and then I'd get her called it the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just a cycle.
So what did rock bottom look like in your marriage?
Okay, fast forward, 2008-9 happened. Real estate died. Guy calls, shutting the arena down. Houses aren't selling. That was an amenity to sell lots. The arena, right? So it's done. So we lose our house. And I knew that we were going to end up back in Arizona where Mary's friend groups were. And I knew that when we got back there, she would leave me.
Because it was that bad at
Yeah.
that time.
We didn't have a truck again because we had a company truck. So Rob Wiley shows up.
Yeah.
I have a U-Haul. He picks up the horse trailer. And we move. Mary's coming down with her folks in the other vehicles a few days later. Dude, it's a miracle. I'm so grateful I didn't kill anybody. I'm driving the biggest U-Haul I got. I stop in Idaho Falls and get a fifth of vodka.
Gosh.
I don't even remember. I wake up the next day in the parking lot of our house, in the driveway of our house. We're moving back into the same place. I drove all day, all night, and don't remember it. And that bottle was empty. Rob stopped and spent the night. He's like, "Oh, I gotta sleep, man." And I'm like, "I'll meet you down there. I'm not tired."
Jeez. And you
Because
already had 3 DUIs at that point
Yeah.
too, right? Yeah.
The pain. The problem is like the risk and the reward thing's so messed up. Like the thought of staying sober or not drinking and driving, it didn't matter. That getting in that kind of trouble, even though it was super scary, wasn't worth sobriety. I wasn't capable of it. So Mary, we get back to Prescott. We move in the same house. Furniture goes back in the same place. To me, it felt defeated because again, just like Tinsley, like stability, home, job, big responsibility, tail between their legs, coming back to the same place. Now I gotta start riding colts again and shoeing horses after I was using my brain for a couple of years to make a good living. And it wasn't long, and Mary's like, "You gotta go sleep out in the office up by the arena in your cot. You can be in the house when Leighton's awake. As soon as he goes to bed, you're out." And we'd have these, horrible fights, and I would lie, and she'd be like, "You've been drinking." I'm like, "I haven't. I've been shoeing horses all day." She's like, "Why do you keep slurring your words?"
Yeah.
"Because I'm tired." Because that's what you do when you're tired. You slur your words. So, end up getting a job in the oil and gas industry,
Okay.
needing change. So I worked 30 days on, 15 days at home. And nope. Before that, I couldn't get any work in the summer when we moved to Arizona. So I go back to Wyoming. Yeah, this is important. Go back to Wyoming,
Jeez.
get a job at the Rockefellers for my friends Tom and Bobby Laughlin.
Okay.
And sober. Mary comes and visits. Like things are looking a little better, right? And she's stayed in Arizona with Leighton and the horses. I go to Wyoming for the summer to get work, and it was better. We needed a break from each other. And she leaves, and I go to this party, and I'm like, I'm gonna be good, man. I got like 2.5 months of sobriety, right? Which is a record for me, right? I mean, I would, dude, before we left Idaho, I would go to Celebrate Recovery, which is like AA.
Yeah.
And then I'd get a bottle of vodka on the way home, right? Like I couldn't maintain sobriety for more than a few days here and there. So I got a couple months behind me. I go to this party. It's a real fancy party, a lot of influential people there that I used to know. I had one drink, and the next thing it's on. My job ends. I'm gonna make this trip up to Montana. I got some horses to sell, and then I'm gonna go see Gabby, and then I'm gonna come back to Wyoming and get my stuff, and I'm going back to Arizona.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna make this little weekend trip. I go sell these horses, stop in Bozeman, Montana to eat, end up getting hammered. I'm like, well, I'm going to drive to Livingston, spend the night. Somebody calls and I'm swerving. I get a DUI.
Number 4.
Number 4 in Livingston. They took me in, all the stuff. They're like, give me a ride back to the motel. Like, if your truck's gone in the morning, you're in big trouble. So spent the night, got up the next morning, the guilt and shame of like, Mary thinks I'm still sober. We're doing pretty good. Drive to see Gabby, and I'm just in so much pain inside. Spend the day there. Get up the next morning to drive to Wyoming, and I still have a bottle of vodka in the truck. And so I'm drinking it all the way from Billings. I'm driving over Teton Pass to drop in Jackson. I'm 5 miles from my cabin. And I get pulled over again.
Jeez.
And they book me. And in Wyoming, you don't get out of jail till you see a judge. So now I got 2 DUIs, 4 and 5 in 48 hours.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Mary thinks I'm sober.
And you're in jail.
I'm in jail. And I can't see a judge till Monday afternoon. And I used to sit at the liquor store in the alley so no one could see me and plead with God. Please take this from me. I don't want to do this. And I mean, like, I would be crying. Like, I don't want to do this. And I'd be out there banging on the steering wheel. Like, I don't want to go in there. Every time I'd go in there. So it's not like that I wasn't wrestling with God in this whole time, right? So
why do you think? Because I feel like this is something that a lot of us can relate to. Why doesn't God take it from us?
I think we're nearsighted and His timing's eternity.
Yeah.
And now look at where we're at, and I know why. But in the moment, it didn't make me feel like He was a very loving Father.
Sure.
Right? So, in jail, my conversations with God were like, I always wanted out of my circumstances.
Right. Yeah.
I always wanted God to do something for me so that it would change my circumstances. And I remember specifically this time praying, like, God, help me be the father that my son deserves. I know my marriage is always going to be over, but please change something in my heart so that I can be a good dad. So this prayer wasn't about me. It was now about my son. And I think I've had a lot of time to think about this over the years. I feel like there's something to do with him being a father. So a father being me, pleading to a father for his son. Makes sense.
That's good.
That's what happened with, you know what I mean? But his son, like, he gets it. And I don't care what anybody says because you can't change my experience. So I don't care if people believe in God. Like, I wish they would open their minds to it, but He took it from me. Like, it left. Whatever, and if they say addiction and alcoholism is disease, well, He cures diseases, right? He's a healer.
Yeah.
He healed me from that, if that's how you want to classify it. I don't know. But I should have died of detox. Because I'd been drinking for...
You didn't have any withdrawals?
None.
Jeez.
Like, it was gone. Like, it left. To this day, that was 11 and a half years ago, I've never had a drink.
Right.
I've never wanted it. I've never found myself outside a liquor store.
Well, and I mean, you and I have talked over the years. And we'll go out to dinner or we're hanging out, and whether it's me or some other guys, like, we'll have beers, and I've asked you, hey, is this okay? Like, is this a struggle? And it genuinely doesn't even faze you.
Zero.
Yeah. Like, you can be around it.
The smell of it, nothing triggers me.
Which, yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Never once have I thought, like, and it's not this weird, like, I can't be around it. Like you said, I don't care. It doesn't.
It's not religious.
It has no effect over me. There's no deep desire inside of me to ever drink again.
Right.
And somebody asked me the other day, like, do you think you could? And I said, honestly, I think I could. Because if I wasn't healed from it, then that means that it's still
Sure.
in me.
Yeah.
I think I could. And what I told them is I would never do that to my wife's heart.
Mm.
I feel like I have the freedom to have a glass of wine and it would have zero effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
I will never drink again to protect my wife's heart.
Yeah.
From what we've been through.
That's good.
So it's freedom.
Yeah.
But it's my choice not to. Not for any religious weird thing, or that I think it would, well, you have one drink and then you're, and I get it. I've been to AA.
Right.
I understand and I appreciate those things, but I feel like I was set free from it. I went to 2 years of AA, which helped me so much because in that 2 years, my wife left me.
Yeah.
And bought her own house and moved out and moved on with my son. And those in that room represented a bunch of years of sobriety and a bunch of dudes and ladies that helped see me and experience. They've been through what I've been through, so they validated me, and it was very helpful for me. But once the state of Wyoming said I didn't need to go to AA anymore, I've never been back. But I'm grateful for my time.
Right.
And I got a lot of tools.
So I have somebody else close to me that had a similar experience to where God just healed them. No withdrawals and drinking excessively. And their spouse had a hard time believing what was happening, believing the transformation that was happening in front of them, right? What was Mary's reaction like?
Well, we were separated for 3.5 years.
Okay.
She bought her own house, moved out. I was
after you had the 5th DUI, all that
Yep.
stuff, and okay, yep.
I started my journey then, and I mean, again, I'm so grateful for AA and the friends I was around at that time. I also had to do a lot of group therapy to satisfy the court system for Wyoming, and I did that in Arizona, and I got a lot of help and healing in that. But that's what really started the journey. I remember sitting in that and it being very humiliating. The whole DUI process is very humiliating, and it's supposed to be, right? Like, it's not supposed to be easy. But thinking, I remember going to the group the first time. There's a bunch of kids from drug court and they don't want to be there. And I'm like, this woman, Gwen, who's an ex-heroin addict from Chicago, this black lady, is what she's saying is resonating with me. I'm like, I might as well give myself to this process. I have to do this. I remember specifically thinking, this could evoke some change in me. I'm going to listen to what she has to say and I'm going to engage. And it was scary and risky for me to sit in those rooms and be vulnerable. My wife's leaving me and crying in front of a bunch of kids who don't want to go to prison, so they have to do this through drug court. And Gwen, like, giving me hard love. Like, you're going to go help your wife move out of her house, out of your house into her own house. I'm like, are you kidding me? Her whole family's going to be there. Humiliating.
Yeah.
And helping getting through that. But that was the beginning of this last 10-year journey that I've been on of, yeah, it was hard, dude. And then after I got back from Wyoming, I got a job in the oil field, and so I was gone a lot, which also was good. And I was getting out of the financial hole that I dug me and myself into. And I would call her at like 9 o'clock at night, and I literally, if I like stuttered or struggled with a word, she'd be like, I knew you were drinking again. And I'm like, but I had the tools now. I was like, you have the right to think that. As much as that pains me, because I haven't been working 18 hours because we worked long, hard hours in the oil field. I'm not, but I get it.
You let her go on her healing journey.
I had to let go. And I just continued on my journey. She would watch me from a distance. I would go to pick Layton up. She would search my truck for bottles. And then she would say, okay, see you in 2 days or whatever. And then I'd fly out and I'd be gone for 30 days. And she had her own life, and she wouldn't let me pay for anything. She had her own mortgage payment, car, like, I didn't pay for it. I helped with half the Layton school was all daycare, preschool that she would let me pay for. And she was on her own. She's like, I don't need you or your money. And again, I was getting the help I needed to, like, as painful as that was, like, I've been sober for 2 years and she still wouldn't believe me.
Yeah.
But I just had to let her go on her journey. I went on mine. We went to the same little tiny church, and I would sit up the front, and everybody knew that I was the asshole that blew this thing up.
Yeah.
Right? And I just got good at facing the music and being like, it's okay. I'm trying to do something different with my life here, right?
Which, like, you were at a point, because that sounds like the opposite of the situations that you were in for a lot of your life, right? Like, you were the guy, you were living this dream, and now you go fast forward to you're getting healthy, and now everybody looks at you as, to your words, the asshole that screwed everything up. But you were willing to face the music at that point.
Yeah, and there was a journey in there. I mean, the identity thing of like, I never was suicidal until I quit drinking. So it wasn't all fun and games once I quit drinking. Then I was forced to deal with all the pain.
Without being able to medicate.
Yeah. So I would sit there with a loaded gun in my mouth and a Bible. I had bookmarked all the places where he called me his beloved. And the son. And I'd set the gun down and I'd be like, I hope this is true. Because I blew it, man. I'd let everyone down in my life. Everyone was super bummed at me. I'd call up friends, like, and they're like, you blew it, man. I'm tired of giving me more chances. Like, people close to me. Mom, dad, I mean, everybody was like, of course, loved me, but like, yeah, you blew it. And if you knew my wife, like, it was super hard. She's so innocent in all this, and I made a mess out of her life. And what kind of dad could I be? Right? So the pain of like, I have this broken, dark thing in me, like, what kind of man can I be moving forward? And the thought of doing it sober was unbearable. And so literally, like, not even sure if I believed in the Bible yet at this point again, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, there was something about that word beloved that was very impactful to me. And for years, dude, I kept that Bible bookmarked, and I would just feel rushes and waves of shame and anxiety come over me. And I'm talking 3-4 years sober, and I would have to get that out and read it again because my identity had been stripped away. Cowboy, roper, wrote bullshit. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this is the mess I'd made in my life, right? Now I'm in the oil field, which I know nothing about that culture. Any respect I had as a cowboy, as a horseman, as a horser was gone. I was just another dude in a hard hat.
Yeah.
Schlepping around trying to make a living. So it was, my whole identity got stripped away, and I was rebuilding my identity in him through his word, which I didn't even believe in. At the time, I was struggling with it. But for some reason, it meant enough to me that it kept me alive from pulling the trigger. But it also was rebuilding my foundation of like, I'm just going to go off who he says I am because I hate myself. So my self-hatred was so deep of the mess I'd made in my life and for everyone around me, right? So that's what slowly and Mary started seeing these changes, right? So over years, that's why I get it when guys I talk to now are like, man, we're just not intimate and with my wife, and like it's been a month, and I'm like being compassionate. I'm like, dude, try like 5 years of not having sex with your wife, right? Like, like we're so quick to just throw everything out, and it's all grace, dude. In those years we were separated, I never went out on one date.
Yeah.
I never had one inappropriate relationship or conversation with another woman, nor did she with another dude.
Yeah.
Like, I look back at that time, it went by fast, but at the time it was going so slow and painful.
Yeah.
Just, I had so much rejection, right? My mom left, the babysitters, all the women in my life that had hurt me. Like, So women rejection is like my biggest trigger.
Sure. Yeah.
And here's my wife.
Right.
Like, I'm different. I'm changed. I promise. And she's like, you're a liar, and I don't believe you. It's freaking hard. After years of getting it together. Now I'm out of debt. I got promoted real quickly.
Like I finally have it together.
Yeah. So we start hanging out more and more. She's trusted me a little tiny bit with her heart, right? And I start coming up here to see my dad at the ranch in Idaho, and see my mom in Boise, and my sister and her family live in Boise. And one Thanksgiving, she's like, I'll fly up there and come hang out. And we hung out. And then that Christmas, we went to her house where her and Leighton were living, and spent Christmas Day together, and it was pleasant and fun. And then that spring, I'm like, every time I try to ask her else, she's like, I don't know. It's too early. I don't know. I'm fine. I'm safe where I'm at, basically. And I'm like, I'm going to buy a place in Idaho, and I'm moving to Idaho with or without you. Because I was starting to learn about codependency a little bit. And I was like, you have to make your choices. I made a mess. And I feel like 4 years is enough of me keeping my life together that I'm going to move on. Not necessarily from her, but I'm not, this isn't a life. So my thought was, I'll move to Idaho, buy a place. I'm working in the oil patch. I'll fly home, I'll pick up Leighton in Arizona, then we'll drive to Idaho. Well, I come on a little house hunting, and she's like, can I go? And I'm like, sure. and still nothing, like, oh, that place is cool. To make a long story short, I found this place that we're sitting at right now on the internet. I just bought it. I had good credit now, I'm making lots of money. I had money saved for down payment, and I'm moving to Idaho. And it was just I don't even remember the conversation. She's like, well, maybe I will go too.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. She put her house up for sale. We've got a U-Haul. And the first day that we moved here to Idaho, which is 8 years ago this next month.
Okay.
9 years ago, was the first time we slept in the same bed in probably 5 years.
Wow.
And I'd love to say, it was perfect. No, nothing was fixed between us other than she trusted me a little bit. We've spent the last 9 years fixing our marriage. Right?
Yeah.
Like, we just were separated. We didn't fix anything. We didn't work on us. She still couldn't trust me. I still brought all my brokenness to the table. All the junk from my past, all my fears and all my fear of rejection and the mom wound and the women thing. I brought it all. It still came to Idaho with us.
Yeah.
So time doesn't heal all wounds at all. You gotta go to work at it. And that's where I think you've got to see the growth in our marriage, and to where we're at today is like, I can't believe it.
I was literally just going to go there. Because we met probably 7 or 8 years ago. And that was when we came and did a visit out here, and you had us over for a barbecue. I'm sitting on the porch. You know, I'm a Southern California kid, right? We grew up in very different types of environments, surfing, all that stuff. And I'm sitting on the porch eating a hamburger, and there's a tractor driving down the road. And I look at TJ, our other buddy. I'm like, where are we? You know, like I'm picturing the little white church around the corner.
Yeah.
But then we moved out here about 6 years ago, and started living life together with you and your family. And I remember, like, you guys working through stuff, you know, like from the outside perspective, also doing life together. Like it wasn't sunshine and rainbows the whole time.
No, you and your wife have like a really good marriage that you've worked hard at, and have your own story. But we've invited you into our story and been like, will you help us? Will you pray for us? Like, you guys have something that we want, which has also been my path to humility of like, if you see somebody that carries something that you desire, like, you have to humble yourself to ask them questions. And because our marriage has been super hard since we got back together.
Sure.
And you got to see
Well,
see that.
fast forward to today, my wife and I, we talk about it all the time. Like we see you and Mary driving down the road because you're going out to, it's date night. You guys are going to run errands together. You're driving, you're doing a road trip up to Montana. I mean, it's and we said this recently. We're like, man, like they're just one of our most favorite couples. Like we admire the relationship that you guys have. And it's just it's a joy for us to watch, then also get to experience with both of you. But it's been tremendous to see what you've allowed God to do in your relationship, the healing that you've allowed to take place, the redemption story of all of that. But I've also seen the work that both of you have put in. And I think that's the thing that sometimes gets missed is you guys have gone after it. You've scratched, clawed, you've done the courses, you've done the stuff, like you've literally invested the time and effort. You've been willing to be vulnerable, go to those painful places and allow the healing to take place. And I'm sure, I know it hasn't been easy. And to see the fruit of your marriage, your relationship to the boys, like I love it. I mean, it's one of the most impactful redemption stories that I've been able to experience, and I've kind of come in at the later years, right? But it's been a joy to watch and experience with you.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, that means a lot, especially coming from you. But it really is surreal to me.
Yeah.
Like I look around and 9 years ago, I moved here and started this new life with my wife. Started a business with one of my best friends, Mike. And the ups and downs of that, and the ups and downs of marriage, and adding 2 more kiddos to the pot. I can't believe this is my life. Like you hear me say that all the time because I like literally get emotional sometimes when I'm driving home and I'm like, I get to run with guys like you and the Wild Courage crew, and I have this marriage that my wife is my best friend. Like we were talking earlier, like we love spending time together. We go out of our way to go to Costco together, to spend time together. Like I don't care what we're doing. Yesterday we were rolling up wire and we were in a fight and we have the tools to work through it. Stuff that would derail us for months. Now it's like 10-15 minutes. And we're like, oh yeah, I see where my brokenness leaked out into this situation again, and I'm sorry. And we can work through it and talk through it and do life together and really trying to model what a healthy marriage looks like to these 3 boys and to Gabby of it's not perfect, but this is what love looks like, and try to model that. Like this is how you treat a woman. And for Mary, it's like this is what you should look for in a wife, because that's important. That's how we break the cycle of how I grew up to my sons, right? And because you get to be my age and you start thinking about legacy, right? Like the decisions that I'm trying to make today in my marriage and in what I'm doing, like I think about my grandkids and my great grandkids, right? Like what kind of legacy can we leave for our families by what we're fighting for today? And it's relational, because at the end of the day, it's not about money. It's not about the car, the truck. It's about the relational aspect of it and how healthy can we get to model it to our kids and give hope to those around us that are going through some hell, which is the whole point of this podcast and Wild Courage is life can kick your ass, and it's kicked all of our asses at some level. And I always say this when I talk about my stories is I get how relative it is. Having grown up with guys or no guys that have dads that were around and moms but weren't around, like they're dealing with their own stuff, and I appreciate that, and it's all relative. So don't think you have to have this super traumatic story to have significant pain in your life that you need to talk about or get some help from, and it all starts with having the courage to talk to somebody you trust. Like, man, I don't know, not to sound whiny or whatever, however you got to get there, but like I've been thinking about this and that sucked, and then being around people that are good at validating you and seeing you and that's what we're finding in Wild Courage is, man, these guys are just in places where they don't feel seen or heard by their wives or at work or by their kid. It's like, in the you know, the masculine world is probably at attack a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And so find guys to be around that like can speak in your life and see you and be vulnerable and courageous and telling somebody your story.
Yeah, I think I speak for a lot of us, Jeremy, when I say that, we really appreciate you paving the way for that, and providing an environment, leading by example today, obviously. Like I said, I've known part of your story, but just learning more about it and you being vulnerable and going deep. I mean, you're putting it out there. You're risking a lot. You're willing to put yourself out there, and just once again to see the fruit of God using your life, your story. I'm sure this story will touch a lot of people. And I speak for a lot of us when I say we really appreciate it. It means a lot. Before we wrap it up, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
But I thought of two questions that I would like to know, and I'm sure others would. But what would be, looking back and knowing what you know now, right? Like, what would be one thing that you say, like, hey, learn this from me, learn this from my story, take this to heart, right? And then also, like, what would be just kind of something encouraging that you want to leave everybody with?
My goal in telling my story is to give anybody hope. But if I could catch that young person, you're gonna deal with pain one way or another. We're gonna keep it pushed down, and it's always destructive behavior. I don't care if it's porn or it's spending or it's work or it's things that are encased in nobility, right? Like, oh, look how successful and hard worker he is, but he doesn't show up for his family because he can't.
Yeah.
Because of the painful childhood or something that he's been through. Like, talk to somebody.
That's good.
Get to a place where somebody can see you and get some validation and understanding and feel loved in that area, so that you can move on and move past it. Because you can't just sweep it under the rug and go on. It will show up, and it's showing up in our lives. I told my story one time. I had this like old cowboy come up to me, and he said, some of the things you talked about happened to me when I was a little feller, he said, and I never told anybody. And that guy was never married, never had kids, and he lived in isolation. He had a camp job his whole life, and he died not too long after that. And I do it for him. Like, don't become that guy, man. His whole life was robbed from him for something that happened when he was a little boy, that it wasn't okay for him to tell anybody. So he lived in pain and isolation his whole life. So to answer your question,
yeah,
you get it. Take the risk of talking to someone that you trust. And it's been so liberating. Part of my healing journey is to get to do this and to talk about it and to help others and to give my life to it.
And that's the encouraging part, right? Like, to see.
Well, you can't give away what you don't have, right? And if you want freedom from whatever, you got to go get it. And once you have it, how dare you not spend the rest of your life trying to give it away?
So good.
And that's what I'm trying to do with my friend and with you and with the Wild Courage guys is, let's get healthy so that we can show up as husbands, so that we can show up as fathers, so that we can show up for each other. What difference can we make in the world? Because during the pandemic, we all felt a little bit out of control. Like, what can we do? And that's where this all started from. I'm like, what can I do in my home? What can I become the healthiest man I can become, right? What can I do in my community? Well, what if we meet in my barn a couple times a month and open the doors to the guys in our community to talk about these things? And then taking that a step further, what could I do globally? Well, I could start a podcast where I have my badass friends who have the courage to have gone through horrible things and come out the other side to give hope to the guys that are driving to work or however they're consuming information to get hope. So oftentimes we just feel like there's nothing we can do.
Right.
That's not true.
So good.
You start in your house. How healthy and whole can we get to be the best husbands that we can be and the best fathers? And if you get that, then you can give it away. Love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And most men I find are walking around so much shame and self-hatred. It's no wonder they have nothing to give their families.
For sure.
Because they got to get that right in themselves first, and then they can give it away.
Because you can't give away what you don't have.
You can't give away what you don't have.
It's so good, man. It's so good. Well, it's been an honor, man.
Dude.
It's been a privilege, an honor, and yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well,
So
you were the best. Thank you so much for doing this, and guys, thanks for following along and listening. I'm always blown away by the responses that we get from the podcast, and it's very, very humbling for us to put ourselves out there and the people I know and to hopefully give somebody hope. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and checking us out. And again, thanks, Josh. Love you, buddy.
love you too.